You have choice. You have always had choice. What change can we be today? What action can we take to create a future of greater possibilities? Welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast with your host, Simone Milasas. Hey everyone, welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast. And obviously you have me, Simone, your host. And oh my goodness, I'm very, very excited today because I have Dr. Dain Heer. So welcome, Dain.
Thank you, Simone. I'm very excited too because I have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so Dain is like the co-creator of Access Consciousness and so much more. I'm so grateful for you, Dain. The risk of not crying in another, well, whatever. If I cry, I cry. That's how it goes down, you know? And fuck. I'm so grateful for who you be in the world. And I was actually just picked up your book, Being You, Changing the World, this morning. And what I did do was I read what you wrote in there, the little essay that you wrote for me when you signed my book. And I'm not actually going to read that out. But here's the thing. This was a very long time ago. I don't know how long ago this was. How long ago did you write this book?
10 years ago.
Was it only 10 years? Okay, but that's still a long time. And the last part of it this morning just hit me. Like you wrote, "Now is our time, my beautiful dear, and I'm so grateful to be sharing the journey with you. Huge gratitude." But those words, "now is our time," and that was 10 years ago, and it's still so prevalent. And it just gets better and better and greater and greater. Like one of the things that you've been doing so many amazing classes lately, not that years ago you were like, you're pretty average, like no, but just lately I'm just like, wow. And I don't know, I've been hearing it in a different way. And one of the things that you talk about is that the universe has this impeccable timing.
Yes.
And the way you wrote this to me too, which is so prevalent, like I said today. And I asked you to come on here because I'm doing a series of podcasts this month, and it's about, mental health. We have Are You Okay Day in Australia, and also on Access Consciousness, which we'll have all the links down below. If you go to accessconsciousness.com/you are not alone. And I wanted to sort of delve into this with how you see this, and also with the book that you wrote, and highly recommend, like if you are having that sense of being lonely, etc., read this book. And it's on audio as well, Dain's voice, which is also great. And can you talk about, like you say, 21 years ago you found Access Consciousness, and that universe has impeccable timing. So if someone's listening to this now too, it's like, hello, impeccable timing. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, well, I was at a place where I was literally going to end my life if things didn't change. And I'd been struggling and really unhappy for many years, but for the 3 years before that, really dynamically. And the thing is, for me, I grew up and I experienced a lot of abuse. I experienced a lot of invalidation of my being, by the people that were supposed to be caring for me, of course. And but I never gave up hope. And so I was one of these seekers, somebody who was always looking. I would do as many weekend workshops as I could afford, and I was reading usually about 5 books at a time, on personal development, metaphysics, spirituality, money, business, all these things, because I knew there had to be other possibilities out there. And I can't tell you the number of times that I would go to a weekend workshop, and by the end of the weekend, I'd be like, yes, finally, I found the answer. And by Wednesday of the following week, it became very clear to me that I had not found the answer, because the universe caved in on my head again. And it was actually after one of those workshops that I went on a Wednesday, literally on a Wednesday after that workshop, where I was again convinced I had found the answer, and the universe caved in on my head. And I remember in that moment giving up hope for what I realized actually the first time in my life. And I was like, okay, universe, I'm done. Either my life changes or I'm out of here. And I made a date to end my life. And the interesting thing is a few days later, I'm leafing through the independent paper in Santa Barbara, and there's this ad, and it said, "Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory." And I was like, I hate whoever did this. And I got so angry, I threw the paper away. And here I am leafing through the paper the following week, because it comes out once a week. And the only thing my eyes focus on is this tiny little ad: "All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory." And I started getting angry again. And then I remembered a long time ago, somebody said, if you love something or hate it, there's something there for you. And I was like, oh, fine. So I called the girl and I'm like, what do you do? She's like, oh, we do Access. And the funny
I
part
love
was,
the way you asked that question. What do you do? I'm gonna hate it
Exactly.
anyway. What do you do?
Exactly. I'm gonna hate it. I'm ready to die. What do you do? But she was like talking to a marshmallow. She was just like, she didn't seem to have any judgment of me or anyone. And I was like, wow. And so she said, probably we should start with this thing called the bars. And I went, okay, what is that? And she said, 32 points on the head, and I'll just touch them really lightly. And I was like, oh, okay. I've done a lot of weird stuff. I live in California. Why not? And I said, what's the result? She said, well, at the worst, you'll feel like you had a good massage. At the best, your whole life will change. And in the back of my head, I had this wonderful thought, which was, my whole life better change or I'm killing myself. What do I have to lose? So I have her come over to my chiropractic office. And here I am living in Santa Barbara, friggin' paradise from everybody else's point of view, and hating my life, hating my office, hating everything I touch that has anything to do with me. And she comes over to my office. I lay down on my chiropractic table that I hate and look up at the ceiling that I hate. And she puts her hands on my head, and something was different. There was this energy I can't really describe. And after about 15 minutes, I started giggling quietly like a little kid. I was like, yeah. And I literally giggled for the next hour while she put her hands on different places on my head. And I got up an hour and 15 minutes after the start of the session, and I'd gone in depressed and suicidal and truly knowing I was going to end my life. And I came out of it with a sense of gratitude for being alive. It changed. What it did was, it's very tough to describe something like that other than the words I just gave. But I guess what I would say is it gave me a sense of space, whereas before everything felt sort of contracted into this thing that I couldn't get beyond. And talk about an impeccable sense of timing. I mean, here I was living in Santa Barbara. I didn't know at that point that Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, lived in Santa Barbara. The person whose ad I saw in the paper happened to be his stepdaughter, whose name is Shannon. And after what happened was, Shannon and I got together every week, and we would trade bars, and I would give chiropractic to her. And my life changed for the greater, and I got more space every single week. And in between times, she would give me a tool to use until I saw her next time. One of them was, who does this belong to? Another one was, interesting point of view. Another one was, what else is possible? Another one was, how does it get any better than this? One real simple thing to focus on each week. And so every time the universe wanted to cave back in on my head, I would use the tool, and it would expand out again to that space that I had after my bar session. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And after about 3 or 4 weeks of getting my bars on, I'm like, who developed this? This is amazing. And she went, oh, my dad. It's like, what? Your what? What? I'm like, I want to meet him. And so I asked to meet him for months. And it wasn't until several months later that I got to meet him. And he came because he wanted a session in my office. But you talk about timing, and what I've realized is this thing that is said, that it is always darkest before the dawn, tends to be very true. And if you're at a point where it's like, I just can't, I won't, I can't, I won't, I'm done, take 2 more steps. And if that doesn't work, take 2 more. And if that doesn't work, take 2 more. And within that, I've seen that 99% of the time, what looks like the most contracted period of your life expands into what becomes the most expansive.
So I want to cover a couple of things here that you mentioned, because I'm so grateful that Shannon gave you those tools each week. And can you talk about receiving? Because you actually received those tools and you started using them. So I see, all this stuff shows up, but then some people just go, like you said, I was already willing to refuse it. So they go, what do you do? It's like, but you started receiving. So what is receiving change?
Well, it's interesting because receiving changes the quality of your existence. And it changes it from existing and surviving to enjoying and thriving. And one of the things that bars changes is it actually gives a person a space where it's okay to receive. Because if you look at the world we live in, there's so few places and spaces and people from which that is okay. And bars, in something that it does, seems to dynamically open that up. And you don't just notice it during the bar session. In fact, you may not even notice it during the bar session. But what receiving allows is, it's like if you're looking, for example, to change something in your life, well, not receiving is where you go through the world and go, well, this will never change, which was kind of where I was at that point. Receiving is, oh, here's a tickle of a possibility. Maybe I'll explore that. Like, you see things differently. It's as though all the flowers came out of the ground and they're presenting themselves to you. Whereas before it just looked like barren ground. And a lot of people right now more, I mean, especially now, are living lives where they believe that barren ground is all that's possible and all that exists. And the interesting thing is, those of us who have been using these access tools and have access to them, it's like we have been having, I hate to say it, but I kind of want to say it, the time of our lives during this whole pandemic thing going on. And I say that because I want people to know it's possible. You don't have to suffer through anything, even if the world throws you the biggest curveball it ever has. And even if everybody else in the world is choosing to suffer for some reason, you don't have to. You do have different choices.
So thank you so much for that. And there's a few things that you've mentioned, and I'd like to sort of, break this down and explore this, because the one piece I see that, and I can, it's a really touchy subject, but what if it wasn't a touchy subject, like mental health and what's going on for you? And I was even talking to someone yesterday about this place where people go, well, I'm here and I want to get to over here, which is like, you've got this end result that you're looking for. And this friend of mine that I was talking to, he went, you know what, I realized that it's not about creating this end result that I've decided is the best result. It's, what if, as you said, take two steps? He said, I'm just going to choose one thing. He said, because I get so caught up in I've got it, how am I going to leap over there, rather than going, I'm just going to choose one thing today. And the discussion that we had was, yeah, and how often when you choose something, you think you're going in this one direction, then all of a sudden the universe just goes, oi, over here. And you're like, and do a 380 and go, oh, that's where I'm heading. And to me, that's the adventure. And also, I keep calling it the gift of COVID, because there has been a hell of a lot of, well, gifts of pandemic, but it has been those small things that you choose that create something greater. So one of the things too, you mentioned with receiving, that when you like getting your bars run and it opens up to more receiving. And I so agree. I resisted receiving. I thought that was the worst possible thing that I could do on planet Earth. I thought that would, I'd be struck down and dead if I actually received. My job was to give. And that was something I really struggled with right at the beginning, was no, if I get caught out, that was like, the worst thing. Oh, look, she's receiving, that energy. And
Kill her, she's receiving.
Yeah, she's meant to give, she's meant to give everything she's got here. And it has been something that has played out for the last, 20, 21 years with access consciousness, and receiving gets bigger. You mentioned that you don't even notice it. It's not cognitive. Like you said, all of a sudden you see all the flowers and you're like, oh. So can you extrapolate and expand a little bit more on that whole place of receiving those smaller things? And I don't know how to say this, but like, when people have something going on, because I know a few people who do have quote unquote mental health issues, and it seems to be like that's the box that they want to sit in, and they don't want to have another possibility, because even though that box is really shitty, it's the one that they know.
Yeah.
And then if they were actually willing to go, you know what, I'm going to bust this box open, then what's some of those steps or some of those things that they could start choosing with everything you've been talking about, like those, I want to say baby steps, but they're not actually baby steps, because they're friggin' massive.
And the thing is, the thing you think is a baby step is often massive. See, we tend to believe that what we think is true, that it's actually reality, but it's not. It's our warped version of reality, and it's what keeps us stuck. So even that thing of most people want to, they want to go from zero to the end without taking any steps in between. But this changing of your life can be a journey of 1,000 steps. But the thing is, until you take the first step, the second step can't even show up, because that's the way the universe works. You have to take the first step before the universe can then rearrange itself to show you the second step. And that idea that you're talking about so many people have this box that they function from, and people would rather have the problem and the suffering they know than the possibility they don't, because their inherent point of view is, well, it'll probably be worse than this, rather than what if it could be way greater. And then also, if you look at it, a lot of people have the point of view, like secretly, they don't want to know this, but if it really got great, then they would have no excuse.
Yeah.
You're like, and it's weird. Yeah. And then you go, well, excuse for what? Nobody actually knows, but they wouldn't have an excuse. And this is the way most of this stuff works. It's not logical.
That is brilliant, Dain. I love that. It's like, because you don't want to have, if you had no problems and no limitations, it's like, then what would you choose? And it's like, but I love the way you said that. It's like, they'd have no excuse for what? I don't even know. I don't even know what I'm trying to hide from. Like,
yeah, exactly. And you're like, wait, what? Yes. And that's exactly it. And the funny part is, we think it's logical and we use logic against us, but it's not logical. And the thing is, magic is not logical. And let's face it, man, people on this planet are dying for a lack of magic and miraculousness. Living a boring humdrum life is not enough. And that's where people get to this place of wanting to die, having mental health problems, because these are the sensitive individuals of the world, the ones that also believe in magic, the ones that know it should exist, and they see nobody else choosing it. And I think one of the greatest gifts we can be for people is go, hey, I still believe in magic and I see it show up in my life on a daily basis, and this is possible. And I know for me, it's like, why did I do all the studies of metaphysics and all this stuff before I found access? Because I knew something else was possible, which basically means I knew magic should exist. I just didn't see anybody choosing it. And if I couldn't have a magical life, I didn't want to be here anymore. And with access, what I found is magical life actually exists. And it's not magical like the airy fairy, my life is so magical, I squirt fairy dust out of my butt instead of farts, and no, man.
Well, no.
Well, hello. Yes, my farts do smell like roses, but that's a special skill I have. Okay. No, it's more like, wow, I can ask for and receive things. I choose things and they show up greater than I thought. Even the things that look like problems, I can change those. It's like navigating life with this fluidity that's actually the possibility. And at this point, it's like I spent so long trying to pretend I was normal that even in, many interviews I've done over the last 2 decades and that sort of thing, and pretty much I'm over it. I'm like, let's bring some magic back into the world. Let's acknowledge that that's why we're here, the capacities we have. And of course, you are not going to want to live in a world that's devoid of that. And whatever magic is for you, magic doesn't mean you get everything you want the way you want it. It means that you can create all kinds of stuff that's way beyond what you thought you wanted. And the things that don't work, you can change those too. And so some steps in getting there is, number one, to look and go, okay, start by doing something that inspires you, because here's the way it works is we have this tonality that we tune into. And so whatever tone we're vibrating on, we will search out that which matches that tone. And so if you're vibrating on depressed and unhappy, you're going to seek things that make you more depressed and unhappy. It's just the way we've learned to function, just what is. So instead, break the algorithm. So instead of I'm depressed and unhappy, I'm just going to watch things that make me more depressed and unhappy, that is not kind to you. How about I'm depressed and unhappy? What can I watch that will inspire me? What can I watch that will make me laugh my ass off? What can I watch that will pull me out of the mood? But it's exactly like you said, in order to go there, people have to stop valuing the significance of their suffering. And people act like their suffering is the most relevant thing in their life. They act, and here's the other a bit of a why behind that is people have this interesting thing where they want to show the world how much people have hurt them. So they're going to stay in suffering so they can show the world how wrong the world is for having hurt them so much. That's called cutting off your nose to spite your face. What's that?
Yeah. Well, rather than out-create it, rather than be like, you know what, we got this. It's good.
Yeah.
Life is good. I mean, one of the things I've been saying recently is I saw this movie and there was this line in it and someone says to this guy, what day is it? And he looks at them and he goes, it's today. And then Francesca and I were adding, what time is it? It's right now. And it's like, if you look at that, like I had dinner the other night with a whole bunch of people and we were like, it's right now. We're eating this fabulous food, drinking great wine, you know, got people there, conversations of possibilities. It's like, it's right now. You get to choose that. So, and Dain, I love that you've also been saying, and thank you so much, because you're such an inspiration on you're willing to be, you know, the weirdest fucker in the world. And it's like, and which also comes with that, the willingness to be vilified, the willingness to have, you know, people hate you, love you, all of it. It's like not choosing based on what, like you said, like what other people's points of view is. It's like choosing what works for you. And I just want to mention one thing too. If you, Being You Day, it's like 22nd of May is now International Being You Day. And you can, we'll put the link down below, but there's a whole day of Dain and a whole bunch of people that he invited on to have these amazing conversations. And yeah, he takes you into his world and beyond it and invites you to create your world. And it's linked to, I mean, obviously the book, Being You, Changing the World. So get the book, written and audio. I think it's fun to have both. And also check out the Being You Day. It's, I don't know, it goes for quite a while, like 12 hours or something like that.
It goes for, yeah, it's about 8 hours. And you can go to beingyouday.com and you can watch the replay of this last one. You know, if you're somebody who's struggling right now, please go watch that. I will make a sort of guarantee that if you watch that entire day, something is going to change in your world. Because we have so few examples of people actually being them, and that day is filled with these amazing people being them and some great conversations about all kinds of things. So
there was, yes. And I want to ask you again, if you can explore a little bit more on the, actually, let me do this, because I just flinged open the book today, right? As one does.
You flinged it open?
Well, that's this book is so good for that. I was going to mention the body whispering book too, actually. I saw that you had that on the side because it's a new, well, ta-da!
I'm just, you know, there we go.
The beginning of this book, though, when this book was getting launched, Being You, Changing the World, right? The first cover of it had this kid with like a cape on it and was jumping off a cliff. And it was like, what the fuck? And it's like, why would you have a kid jumping off a cliff with a kite, not a kite, a cape? I'm like, have you seen this man? He's eye candy. And it's like, I mean, are you going to stop at an airport and buy that? Or are you going to stop and buy the one with a kid with a cape? And I was like, you need to use, but here's the thing, you need to use what is amazing about you to your advantage. It's like, you know, if you created those looks, like Dain is so much more than eye candy, but hell, why would we not use that to our advantage and invite something different? Yeah.
Thank you. And it was because of you that my ugly mug is on the cover. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And you're welcome, everybody who gets to perv on Dain when you buy the book as well. And then you open it and go, damn, he's actually got some good shit to say too. So just a little bit here, because I really, I love the way you've been talking about, you know, like this comfortable box, right? But then you get to create your reality. You are the source and you get to choose something different. And no matter what is occurring around you, no matter what people judge of you, no matter like how weird it is, it's you think it's comfortable where you are. Like I love the way you've referenced that rather than find out what else is available. And one of the things that I do get that a lot of people make as the reason and justification for not choosing that is the rightness and wrongness. And in your book, just a little brief thing, if anyone's got it, it's on page 71. And it says, what if there is a greatness that you are, that is hidden behind every wrongness that you are trying to hide? What if everything that is wrong with you or about you isn't actually wrong? What if it's actually a potency you have that doesn't match this reality, but no one has ever been capable of showing you that? Will you make the demand that you will actually show you everything that is true for you, even though it may be different than what seems to be true for everyone else? Like that. Whatever it looks like, whatever it takes, you're the only one who can. It is weird being different, but what if it were fun?
Boom.
Yeah, it's like nailed it, mic drop.
And
And
that,
that,
that so speaks to exactly what we're talking about. And so many of the people that experience mental health challenges, the fundamental thing about it is that they're different. They don't fit in. And they assume and they are told that that is a wrongness. And one of the things that we both have in our awareness is, what if everything you thought was a wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you? And we buy that story of the wrongness and then we perpetrate it on ourselves. But it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, because anytime you're functioning from a lie, you get heavy. And so what if that difference of you is actually where the magic is? What if that difference of you is where the possibility is? And what if that difference, part of the difference, is a level of sensitivity and awareness of others and a level of desire to contribute to others that makes you take on as much of their stuff as you can to try to change the world? But what if it's finally your time to be able to shrug that off and be able to actually enjoy being alive, and to explore the yumminess of being alive, like the spaces of possibility, like that you get hanging out with people that you adore, that you get going out in nature, that you get that the earth and the sun contribute. And there's so many beautiful experiences to have here. And there are actually a lot of beautiful people on this planet. It's just that they whisper their possibility, and so many people shout.
yeah. I was just laughing because yesterday I was talking to a friend and I went, my God, there's a lot of dickheads in this world. I
Yeah,
went, but then there's also a lot of really cool people too. So,
yeah. And
yeah.
we would
But it
both agree
acknowledges
with that,
yeah, yeah,
both of those. But if you only look at the dickheads, that's all you focus on, because there are so many and they yell so loud and they're so fucking annoying. I mean, there are more. You need to watch the movie Idiocracy. You haven't seen the movie Idiocracy, you got to watch it, because we're living it right now. And I can't imagine a time in either human history or the history of any other planet where there have been this many idiots coming out of the woodwork. But hey, cool. Well, guess what? The world is doing what it's doing. What are you going to choose as your life? And I know
yeah,
what it's like firsthand to have experienced invalidation, to have experienced dynamic physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, all different and all together. And I know what it's like to live my life to prove that story, the story of the wrongness of me, and to try to show the world how much it has hurt me. And I also know what it's like to go, you know what? That's not big enough. That's not kind to me anymore. Just suffering to prove that I suffered. I'm like, what else is possible? And then I looked at it and I was like, wow, how many people am I making wrong with my depression? How many people was I, because it wasn't until after the depression I could look from this place. How many people was I making wrong? I'm like, oh, all of them, like so many of them. And then how many people, and then I looked at that and I went, okay, so what would be a better way of going about it? Oh, you know what? Getting happy, being successful on my terms, and saying, hey, you know what? You did your best to destroy me, but guess what? It didn't work. So better luck next time, sucker. I'm going to go have fun and you can't stop me. Nanny, nanny, nanny.
I'm just gonna add here too that if you're listening to this, it's like, please even listen to it again, because there's so much that there's this energy that I can so perceive that Dain is accessing, that is really that underlying place which he mentioned. What reason and justification are you not using to choose you? And the name of Dain's book is Being You, Changing the World. It's not, being the victim of someone, or getting angry or cranky at everyone around you, or, suffering because of others. And you truly have, you did have a lot of abuse. Like, if I met you and found out all the abuse that you had and you were an asshole, I'd go, well, it's because of the abuse, but that's the reason and justification that most people do. But you are literally, and I'm not using this word out of context, because that's one of the things that Dain hates, is using literally out of context, is you are literally one of the most kindest, caring beings on the planet. And you are willing to be all of you, no matter what it takes and no matter what it looks like, and no matter who has a point of view about it. And it's like that brilliance, like, and you may not, like, you might be listening to this podcast and you might not be able to get there right now. But here's the thing. It's like Dain's been using the tools of access consciousness for 21 years. And it's like, I've been using them for about 20. I don't know. I came along about a year after Dain. I don't even know how long it is. And it's like, it's this marathon, right? It's like every day I'm learning more and more and more. Like, and every day you think you've gotten somewhere, and then it's like, boom, the universe goes, hey, you need to have a look at this as well. And you go, whoa, this is really uncomfortable. But I'm going to look at this no matter what it takes, no matter what it looks like, because my life keeps getting better and better every single time I choose consciousness, every single time I choose to be in question, every single time I'm using the access consciousness tools. And whether you come along to an access class or not, it's up to you. But you have that sense of being able to choose something different and choose something greater. It's like, that's your choice. No one can make you do it. God knows, it's like no one can make you do anything. It's like, but that's your choice. What are you going to choose? It's like, play it safe, or actually find out what it's like to have a life that's exploring and has this adventure to it. I mean, you said once, I love Dain, you've made more bad choices than most people have made choices. I'm like, freaking love that. Love it.
And if we would, that is so interesting, because when you live from wrongness, it's like you avoid everything because you don't want to create more wrongness. But here's the thing, if we could allow ourselves to choose, even if it's wrong, we'd realize that there's a lie in the idea that we are wrong. And so for me, I just went, you know what? I'm going to friggin' choose. I may screw it up, but I'm going to try it, And if I screw, it's so funny because the screw up 99.999 all the time actually has always been less than I projected it would be. And even when I would screw something up and I wouldn't do it right, or it wouldn't turn out well, I would always get awareness from it that would make it so I wouldn't screw up the same thing again, or at least not in the same way, but it's like there's such a beauty in choice. There's such a beauty in being willing to screw it up. One of the things I suggest that people screw up at least one thing a day joyfully, like spill your coffee everywhere, like whatever. Just get in the habit of choosing, even if it's wrong. Because if it's wrong, you'll figure out what it was that was a limited point of view and do something different. It's like, got to start giving ourselves freedom. And we do that by allowing ourselves to choose, but also being willing to explore things, even if they're wrong. Because one of the things that occurs for people who have anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, whatever, they're not just in judgment of their actions, they're in judgment of their thoughts. And it's like, that's a lot of stuff to judge. And I understand it.
1984, the thought police.
Say that again? You cut out for a moment.
If you're enjoying this podcast and have a question or topic you'd like me to address, please leave a review wherever you are listening. The best way for me to know what it is you want to hear about is to send in your questions, and we actually read all the reviews that come in. So let us know which episodes you loved and what you want to hear about next, right there in the podcast reviews. And thank you. Truly, truly grateful.